guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Chloe if you are new here, and if you are, I would love for you to hit that bright subscribe button down below. And of course, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up. So today I have got for you another nursing video, as always sponsored by the lovely people over at Nurses.co.uk. If you haven't watched any of my nursing videos before, I will leave the playlist linked up there. But essentially, Nurses.co.uk is a careers website built for nurses, by nurses, and on top of all the fab job opportunities, they've also got an incredible amount of resources, blogs, news, all things nursing related on both their website and their social media platforms. So I will link everything you need to know about them down below. And this month's video is essentially a bit of a continuation from last month's video. So in last month's nursing video, we spoke about burnout and what that looks like and feels like as a nurse. And this was so that we can all be better prepared to spot it, to know what it looks like and feels like, so we can intervene before we get to the point of being, really incredibly burnt out. If you haven't seen last month's video, I will link it up here for you to check it out. I also mentioned in the last video that the reason I wanted to cover this topic is because I myself have been feeling pretty burnt out recently, and I'm just kind of managing to get back to myself now within the last couple of months. I've started to feel like myself again and get that kind of like fire back in my belly. And the main point that I wanted to get across in last month's video was the fact that if you are burnt out, or if you're feeling burnt out, it doesn't make you a bad nurse. It doesn't make you bad at your job. So don't beat yourself up over it. You are not a failure. We are only human, and we need to give ourselves credit because we do a really, really difficult job. When I was looking at different ways to deal with burnout, a lot of the resources that I read mention this kind of 3 R's approach to dealing with burnout. The first R is to recognize, to know what burnout looks like. See the signs of it, which is what we covered in last month's video. The second R is reverse, to undo the damage done by stress and burnout by seeking support and better managing your stress. And then the final R, the third R, is resilience, which is all about building up your resilience to stress so that you're less likely to get burnt out in the future. And you can do this by taking care of your physical and emotional well-being. So my first tip for both avoiding and coming back from burnout is clinical supervision. Now, this is something that's just expected of us as nurses anyway. You should be having clinical supervision, but honestly, I cannot stress how helpful this is, particularly if it's someone who's been maybe doing the job a lot longer than you. I mean, generally it should be someone who's at least 1, if not 2 bands higher than you, but I think particularly if you're a young nurse or a newer nurse, having someone who's been doing this for a lot longer than you, who's going to have ridden the ups and the downs, and they've come out strong on the other end, still a nurse, is really helpful. Quite often, it's not going to be kind of your job as a whole that's stressing you out. It's going to be, 1, 2, maybe a handful of things that's stressing you out and making you feel burnt out. Talking these issues through in clinical supervision can be really helpful, as you can get some advice or maybe even get a different perspective on the situation. Make sure you're choosing the right person to be your clinical supervisor. What you don't want is for your clinical supervision to just turn into a moaning session, because A, that's not productive, and B, it's not going to make you feel any better. If anything, you're probably going to feel worse. You need to be able to explain what's stressing you out, kind of get it off your chest, but then turn that into a productive and helpful conversation. So yes, having clinical supervision is really important, but actually making sure that you've got the right clinical supervisor for you and you're doing it in the right way is also really important. You want to come out of your clinical supervision sessions feeling better, not like you've just had a moan and now you're like, oh, now I've got to go back on the ward. Along the same kind of lines, I definitely think limiting your contact with negative people is another really good way of avoiding burnout. We've all come across these people, these kind of like negative Nancys. Apologies if your name is Nancy. Whether that be in your personal life or your work life, there are a lot of people who just seem to be really negative. I would recommend that you try and avoid talking about what's stressing you out in front of these people, because again, it's not going to make you feel better. It's just going to turn into a moaning session that makes you feel worse about everything. It's not going to be beneficial or productive. Personally, if I walk into the nursing office and there's people having a moan, I will either try and change the subject completely, or I'll walk out of the nursing office if I can. I really don't want to be part of those conversations, because I think when you're already feeling a bit stressed, being part of those conversations is going to make you feel worse, not better. And same in your personal life, maybe don't avoid people, but if there's people who are able to put a real downer on your mood, don't discuss things like your work with them, because otherwise their negative attitude is going to affect your attitude. On the other hand, a really good thing to do is to be more sociable with your colleagues. When you've got a really good group of people around you and you've got a friendly atmosphere at work, it is really going to help to pick your mood up. Plan some fun days out or nights out with some of your work colleagues. If you guys follow me regularly, you might have seen that I went to a combat archery place recently and I absolutely loved it. So I've now taken it upon myself to organise a group of us to come and do it. What could be more fun than shooting bows and arrows at your work colleagues? Another thing I really like to do is if one of my friends is on shift on a different ward, I'll often try and coincide my break with their break so I can go and spend my break with them, which is also a real pick-me-up and is going to help you foster that kind of attitude of, you know, I've got friends at work, I've got supportive work colleagues. Another thing I like to do quite regularly is bake cakes, because I feel like when people walk in the nursing office and there's cakes there, all of a sudden they're in a better mood. And who doesn't love cake? I mean, another really helpful thing to be able to do is to kind of mentally reframe the way that you think about work. Now, if you're already really incredibly burnt out, this probably isn't going to be something you'll be able to do because you'll be past this point. But if you kind of notice it before it gets to that point, this is a really, really helpful thing to be able to do. You know, if you're feeling stressed out, if you can feel yourself becoming burnt out, it's a really helpful thing to be able to have kind of in the back of your mind just a handful of examples of things that kind of reaffirm to you why you do your job, why you love your job. That could be things that you've done for a patient that you witnessed yourself having such a really good positive effect, or even things that patients have done for you, which just shows how much they care and appreciate you. For example, a few weeks ago, I worked quite a lot of overtime and there was an incident when I was assaulted by a patient. And although that was a really, really bad shift, before I went home, one of the other patients handed me a picture that she'd drawn for me. It was an amazing piece of art. She's such a talented artist. And on the back, she'd written, I know that was probably really scary and that you're probably really tired, but I just wanted to let you know that I really appreciate everything you do for me. And I think that is such a great thing that I'm really going to hold on to every time I kind of have a difficult shift. That's just one example I can pull from the back of my mind and be like, you know, this shift was a really difficult shift, but don't forget that time when that patient reminded you how much they appreciate you. In terms of preventing getting burnt out, having a good work-life balance is possibly the most important thing you can do for yourself as a professional, and in terms of your own personal well-being. It quite frankly is the most important thing that you need to learn, and it's something that I'm still working on. It's something I'm not very good at, but all I can do is keep working towards it. I think those people that have kind of got a family or have got children, that's kind of something that almost forces you to have a work-life balance, because you need to do things with your children, you need to spend time with them. If you're in a similar position to me where you are, you know, quite young, you don't have any children, and your priorities at the moment perhaps are your career or saving to buy a house, which are both of my priorities at the moment, then it can be really, really difficult to almost force yourself to have that work-life balance. But I can assure you, you are a lot more productive when you've got that good work-life balance than you are if you're just working flat out. Along the same kind of lines, take time off. And again, I realise this is especially difficult for some people if maybe you are saving up like I am. I'm saving to try and buy a house hopefully next year. So I don't want to have kind of several days off. I want to be working as much as I can so I can keep saving into that pot to buy a house. Or perhaps you just really need the extra money to support your family, you know, whatever reason it is, you're booking those extra shifts. Whilst the ideal would be to have a few days off, if that isn't possible, one thing that I would recommend is booking shifts outside of where you normally work. So the ward that I work on is kind of like one of 4 wards. And until very recently, I was doing most of my extra shifts on one of those 4 wards. But something I've started doing now is picking up more shifts outside of where I normally work. So different specialities, different hospital sites. It's a way that I can ensure I'm still picking up those extra shifts and I've still got that extra money coming in, but also I'm learning new skills from it, or maybe things that I haven't done since I was a student. So it's better in terms of my personal growth and development, but also it's time away from the stress that is my own ward. Because let's be honest, you're always going to find a shift on your own ward a lot more stressful than a shift somewhere else, because working on your own ward comes with a lot more responsibility than if you're just picking up an extra shift somewhere else. Along the same kind of lines, setting boundaries is a really, really important thing to do. Learn when to say no. And again, this isn't something I'm an expert at myself, but if your ward manager comes up to you and says, hey, we're short-staffed at the weekend, can you do an extra shift? Learn to say no. And I'm the worst at this. If I'm offered a shift, I'll take it, which is really not a good mentality to get into. Saying no to an extra shift or overtime does not make you a bad person. And again, on the kind of lines of setting boundaries, do not check your work emails outside of work. And again, I'm guilty of this myself, but it's something I'm getting much better at. You've got no excuse. There is no reason to be checking your work emails at home. Don't do it. Work is for work, home is for home. And then the last few things I wanted to mention are probably obvious ones, but I feel like we all need a good reminder of them. The first thing is to take your breaks. and leave on time. Again, not always possible if you've got a really chaotic shift, really short staffed. I appreciate that that is the goal and it isn't always a possibility, but wherever possible, take your breaks and leave on time. You do not, especially early in your career, want to be getting to the habit of not taking breaks and leaving really late. It's not good for you. It's not good for you in the short term in terms of how productive you are whilst you're at work, and it's certainly not good for you in the long term in terms of avoiding becoming burnt out. Exercise. I realise that it's probably the last thing on your mind after a long day, but there are so many things you can do. You know, you don't have to go and do a 2-hour session at the gym or an hour's run. There are yoga workouts you can find on YouTube that you could do in the comfort of your own home. You could go for a swim if you want something a little bit less intense. Go for a hike. I've just recently joined a netball league, which I'm really enjoying. And I've also started going to some aerial hoop classes. So look for some slightly different ways, some more fun ways of getting in some exercise, meeting some new people. You are really going to be appreciative of it. And then the thing that we always tell our patients, get enough sleep. Again, not always easy with shift work, but try your absolute best to get some sleep. I can really feel the difference if I go to work having not had a very good night's sleep. I can physically feel myself working slower. And again, a balanced diet is always going to help you feel your best. If you're just running off sugar and carbs, you're not going to be working to your full potential. I could go on and on, but I think those are the most important things for me. If you can think of anything else to avoid burnout or come back from burnout, let me know in the comments down below. We should all share our knowledge. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up if you enjoyed the video, and of course hit subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you again next time.